Good evening and welcome to another episode of the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable. We've got a full crew in the house. Excited to kind of have another in-depth discussion and excited for the guests that we have on board. So, as always, here with the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable, we would like to welcome you all first. I'll start with the ladies. Danielle, thanks for joining us. How are you doing this evening?
Good, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, we've been talking about this kind of like for a long time with Las Rojas and everything, and maybe doing something with the girls this last season with the UPSL, and schedules just kind of didn't work out, and then we wanted to do a World Cup show, but apparently France is more exciting than the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable. So
I could have maybe tried to Skype in from France. I don't know how
Oh, you can't go to France and, hey, I'm going to do a podcast back home. Come on.
Hey, let me just rub it in your face.
Who was the previous player that was doing all the awesome interviews over there for ESPN and stuff with the amazing backdrops?
Was it like what Lindsay Horan did some like takeovers with like her family, and so she was out and about, and then Alex Curry maybe?
Okay, I just heard it on the radio on the way in, so I never got to see it, but we could have had you there overseas, you know, and everything, but that's okay.
Our budget isn't that big, Scott.
Listen, next World Cup, I'm ready.
Right.
I'm already like targeting in on where we're going. So
sounds good. We've also got Coach Auggie Mendez joining us this evening from Samba and Antonian. How are you doing tonight, Coach Auggie?
Hey, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure too. And hi Danielle, and hi Rafa and Harry.
Hello.
How you guys
Absolutely.
doing?
And Harry and Rafa, and is that AJ in the background there that I see? Do we
Yes,
have another
AJ
guest?
is watching Atlanta, Orlando, so if something exciting happens, I'm sure you guys will hear it.
All right, well, we want his breakdown for San Antonio FC here in a little bit, Harry, so make sure he's ready, man.
Hey, they want you on Breakdown San Antonio.
But Coach Auggie, we're excited to have you here, and Rafa, I'm sorry not to forget the silent but beautiful Rafa.
Yeah.
How are you doing tonight, man?
Good. Just enjoying going back to work again.
Hey, I'm going to be filling the role of Rafa tonight. Rafa's going to be Harry tonight with the hot takes. You know,
You're just going to sit there and look pretty, is that what you're saying?
well, I'll sit here. I never look pretty. That's never been my claim to fame.
Well, we're going to get into some San Antonio FC discussion here in a little bit, but first and foremost, definitely excited to talk about women's soccer here in San Antonio, and who better to talk about it with than Coach Auggie and Danielle from Las Rojas. So, Coach Auggie, just for our viewers and stuff like that who may not be familiar with who you are, why don't you start off and give us a little bit of background going back to your playing history and just a little bit of your playing days?
Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna make it, kind of quick. So I was born in Mexico City, and I played for the Pumas Academy until I was 13. Then I was part of the Pumas Reserva Profesional, professional reserve, when I was 15. And then I played 15 years through several clubs: America, León, Huastepec, Unión de Curtidores, Pumas. And last team to play for was Orizaba. And then after that, my mom was American, so I always had the opportunity to come here, through all those years. And when I was 30, I decided to join the Army. So I joined the Army. I was in the Army for 22 years, and I was lucky enough that the Army had teams too. So I played for the All-Army soccer team. I played for the Armed Forces men's national team. And then after about 10 years, I became the coach of the men, Armed Forces men. And then suddenly they asked me, they created the women, and then they asked me if I wanted to be coach, and I said yes. And I went to 7 World Cups with the women. It's called CISM, Comité International Military Soccer. It's a French word. And then I retired in 2010, and my wife said, we're going to retire in San Antonio. And I said, well, let's go. And I got here, and I love it here. So that's a little quick background, but if you have any more questions or any more details or anybody has, I can go into it.
Well, retired, I guess, quote unquote, is the way to say it, right? Because far from it as far as your coaching history goes, even here in Alamo City. So tell us a little bit about the different teams that you coach for here in San Antonio.
Okay, so when I got here, I I have two kids, and I looked for a club, and looked at several clubs, and we ended up in SA United. And they played there their whole since they were like 8th graders until they graduated from high school. So I coached in SA United until like 3 years ago, and then I got into high school, and I love it. I mean, I'm coaching for Antonian, and it's a great organization, a great private school, and I'm going into my 5th year as a girls head coach.
5th year there at Antonian. Looking forward to your upcoming season.
Yes.
Just to kind of highlight that a little bit, can you talk to us a little bit just about kind of maybe how many returning seniors you have this season, or just kind of what maybe some of y'all's goals are for the upcoming high school season?
Well, I only lost like 2 or 3 starters that were seniors. I actually lost 12 seniors last year.
Okay.
But we have a good freshman class too coming in, and so I'm pretty optimistic. And I think the girls work very hard, and they all play for different clubs. Some of them don't, but they work hard in the season. So I'm loving it there.
Gotcha. So time for the young squad to step up a little bit there for you guys this season, huh?
That's correct. Danielle can tell you she's a ref couple of my games, so she actually can talk about my Antonian team, and they're very good.
That's why we have her here on the show this evening, Danielle. So as Coach Auggie there mentioned, also a referee here in the San Antonio area. And I've seen you at WPSL games. Tell us a little bit about your refereeing and some of the different leagues that you've had the opportunity to referee in.
A little bit of everything, honestly, in San Antonio. I've done the SAFC DA games, the different women's games, just a lot of the youth games are around town, men's, women's leagues, tournaments. I've reffed. I know we were talking earlier about the Defenders Cup. I've been able to ref in that. I think there's just a ton of variety, and there's so much soccer. And so it gives people who want to ref or who want to make money and still pursue their passion an opportunity to get into it. And PSA clinics are going on. You can ref now. We'll take you.
Yeah, is there a website or I've actually thought about it often myself, just for Saturdays and Sundays, to make a little bit of extra money, like you say. Is there a website, or how would you suggest for those of us who maybe did it 5 or 10 years ago, to get re-involved?
So the easiest way is to go to stsr.org or stxref.org, which is short for South Texas. .org, and that's going to get you set up with your USSF certification, so you can ref a number of the youth games. And then also there's the high school, so a lot of people will coach during the fall, and then come January to April, they'll ref for middle school and high school, which is a great opportunity, and especially to get your start. Yep, Auggie and I think we did a game together, or we were.
Oh yeah. We've done several games.
And that's just tasso.org, and you just follow those prompts. But it's a great way to keep pursuing your passion, to stay involved, and it pays pretty well too. So.
Absolutely. Auggie, I think I've actually seen you out there on Sundays sometimes with the Sunday League I play in, doing some of the officiating and stuff like that out there also. So
yes, yeah, that's correct. On Sundays, I Sasa, I go to that league, and I love reffing, and going back to the team. So, when I left SA United, I started coaching in high school, and then, I started with Samba, and Samba had a men's team, and Coach Rexro, invited me and, opened the door, and I said, yeah, why not? And then, I was there, and then this year we had the women, and now we have an 01 boys team. So.
Absolutely.
And Scott, on the referee, it just happens to be Alamo City's actually offering a grassroots in-person field session.
Yes.
On the 11th here. I put the link on the chat here. I guess it says it's an in-person grassroots field session. The fee is $62.40 for that here, but basically it's a way to get introduced into it. And I put the link on there for you if that is something that you're looking at possibly doing for that here. So there is one actually coming up with this weekend, right? The 11th here. So yeah.
Yeah, there is.
Pre-register.
Yes.
You heard it here. Well, we've got Danielle now as our official that we can get into all of our pro referee discussions with, because she has all the answers, right?
We got to save that because Team Red had a bad week last week.
You can just take it out on Danielle, right?
And so there are way better people to talk to than you. I can get some true experts on here for us.
We're just kidding. We don't have any experts on this show other than the coaches that we talk to. And that's what I want to get into now, Auggie. We had the opportunity kind of to talk to John last week about the men's team. You mentioned Samba and everything, and how you're involved with them now with the ladies in y'all's first season here in the UPSL. You kind of saw it firsthand from a coach's perspective. What goals, you and your team had set and everything for yourselves heading into this season. Tell us a little bit. I know John kind of touched on it briefly, but tell us a little bit about this first season playing with Samba there in the UPSL and just some of the things that you guys accomplished and everything there in your first year.
Yeah, well, Coach, I'll tell you as a coach, I brought this to John, and John said, hey, let's do a girls team. And we were originally going into the WPSL, and but because we had the man in the UPSL, John got a call from the UPSL and says, hey, why don't we just, instead of you going to the WPSL, let's just do a league. And I'm not going to go over that because you already talked about it with John last week.
Sure.
So we played the league, and gladly we played, because at a point it was only 3 teams. And thanks to John's push on some of the owners, we actually got 4. And, we got to the final. We played a very good team, Sporty, and, they deserved to win. They won. But, the after effect of all these leagues, women leagues that they are, right? I wish people understand that there's only one professional women's league. Okay, there's no 4 or 5 or 3 or 2 like a lot of people think, and the only professional league is the correct me, Danielle, is what is it?
NWSL.
NWSL. Okay, and they only have 9 teams. It's a league that has been for a while, and it's very limited. There's not a lot of you got to travel. There's teams all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. And it's not that easy to have a team there. You can go to they got a website, and it gives history, and it gives you the whole thing. So, I've been hearing that they might bring a team here to San Antonio and all these, it's all secondhand information, right? We don't really know, but that league is very hard. It's like the equivalent to the MLS for women. And a lot of our national players and a lot of foreigners. I just found out that I think Martha plays for Orlando. So that tells you the caliber of players that are in. And if you look, 9 teams, you would ask, why isn't there 18 or 17 or 15? Because you got to have an infrastructure for that league. It's not just like a UPSL team or a WPSL team or a United Women's Soccer team. There's no comparison.
Coach Auggie, I wanted to ask you a question. Yes. How do you feel about the Women's Professional League here compared to Liga MX women?
That's a good question. And let me tell you, when that league came about, everybody was hesitant, not only Mexicans, but let me tell you, that league took off. And they really have a very good league. And a lot of their players have started to go overseas, to go play in Europe, to come here to the United States. So I'm telling you that league, they did it right. And, why I think they did it right is because every professional team has a women's team. Now, if I have to give advice to the United States, they should do the same thing. Right now, the only one that has a close connection of all those 9 teams is the Dash with the Houston.
Seattle.
That's it. All the other teams, they're like on their own.
Utah is connected to the Utah Royals. Is connected.
Okay, so Utah is another one.
Seattle as well.
If they should have, the United States should have done what the Mexican did. All the MLS teams should have a women's team. And I'm going to tell you this, if they do that, it's going to be fabulous because they already have the infrastructure. They have all the installations. They have everything. So
would it be possible, you think, Liga MX Women's League ever consider San Antonio having a team here? How would you feel about that?
Well, I think it would be great, but it would have to be very carefully planned and not be like just come here for 1 year and then disappear. That hurts the fan club. You know, if you're going to have a team of that caliber at that level, it has to be very well done. You know, and do it right.
So let me ask you.
I think it would be great.
Obviously, Coach Rexroth kind of mentioned on the show that next year for the women's, the Sambitas going to be playing in the WPSL.
We are trying. We will try to go. Let me explain something about WPSL. I had the privilege of meeting and knowing Jerry Sinelli. Jerry Sinelli, rest in peace. He was the founder of the Storm, which was one of the original clubs that formed in 1997, the WPSL. And, I met him and I remember I was with the Athenians. I was the head coach for the Athenians. And that league has a conference in Vegas every year. All the owners and all the coaches go to that meeting to, interact, talk about the league, do the schedules and everything. But I had the privilege to meet him in person and talk to him. And the guy always told me, I asked him, so how come you haven't gone to the men or you haven't gone to the boys? Like, other leagues, like the UPSL, like other leagues. He says, listen, I want to focus on my passion, which is the women. And if you realize that league has been on since 97 all the way to right now. And they have 119 teams.
Well, and that was going to kind of be my follow-up question with that. You talk about the international superstars and stuff like that play in the NWSL, but even the WPSL had some players that came from the WPSL for the women's national team. Is that correct, Danielle?
No, yes, that's correct. For example, when I was with the Athenians, we went to play FC Dallas women, and they had a lot of players from the Caribbean, national players. So a lot of the teams have professionals, and, a lot of the teams don't. It is not a professional league. It's a premier league. It's called Women's Premier. And, a lot of, I think the majority of the girls are college girls. That's why the league starts after 1 May, because NCAA rules state that, Division I players cannot play until after the 1st of May. So a lot of the teams, that's the basis,
And they do give those college-age girls, a place to play and everything. But, I'm kind of curious because, Danielle, I know you've had an opportunity this last season to get a chance to kind of check out a lot of the different teams. Along with Harry, you guys have kind of ran into each other out there. And one of the common things that, we've kind of always seems to come back up is whether or not San Antonio can support the number of women's teams that we have here. And I'm just kind of curious with the number of different teams that you've seen, do you feel like each kind of brings their own unique value, or do you think, that there's room for each of them here within San Antonio?
So honestly, we're the 10th biggest city. If we're even questioning that, then we don't deserve to have a professional team. We're one of the 10 biggest cities. We should be able to support several teams. We're bigger than Austin. We're bigger than Dallas, and it may not include Fort Worth numbers, but we've just passed them. And the city's growth is expected to climb. They were anticipating a few years ago upwards of another 1 million people. So we're just behind Houston, and Houston can support multiple teams in multiple leagues. And a lot of it is opportunities for women to play at that next level, women to continue to develop their soccer careers in college and prepare for professional. And so honestly, it's a track. We have high-level women's soccer players here. They need a place to play. Honestly, we need to stop sending them to Austin to Lone Star. who has one of the better women's teams in the area. But we need them to stay in San Antonio so we can continue to develop. So I think we're big enough, and everyone has a different market, different parts of the city. So it's not a problem. And I still see good crowds when I've gone out there. The Athenians have a good crowd on the east side. Alamo City has a good crowd. The other teams that play kind of in the central, and they pull from their youth academies, in where they're at. So absolutely. It shouldn't even be a comment. If we're not talking about why we have 5 men's teams and why can't we support them? That should have been the first conversation. Since no one had that conversation with the men's teams, it's a moot point at this point. We have just as many men's teams as we do women's. Yep. So there you go. If you didn't ask that question about men's teams, we shouldn't ask it about women's either.
But I think we do ask that about the men's team as well here, is because, to be honest with you, the attendance at the women's games far exceeds the attendance at the men's games. It's not.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
It's not even close.
Well, and I'm kind of interested, Auggie, because I know you have a little bit of a different theory just in terms of the level of talent and the number of, whether or not San Antonio, the talent in the women's versus the men's. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen from a coach's perspective in coaching the women's to the level of talent, like Danielle says, when it comes to women's soccer here in San Antonio.
She mentioned men's teams, right? So in women, San Antonio can support 5, 6, even 7 teams. Like she said, the women talent is enormous. And high school players, the women high school players now, they're way beyond the way they were like 10 years ago. I mean, they're all fit, they're all technical and tactical. Now, what me and you talked about a long time ago was with the men. So 5 teams of men, 5 teams of women. Every game of the women, we had crowds. With the men, you don't get crowds. I mean, Harry hit it on it. But let me tell you why. Because the men, a lot of men don't like to travel. I don't know why. We played in 2 conferences, a hard conference, and we played in the Houston conference. We never went to Houston with the same team. Never. We always had to take different people. And we're not the only ones. All the runners and Bernie and who else? Who am I missing?
For the men's?
The men's, yeah. I think Mac FC at one point. They never went to other places. Now, with the women, we went to Killeen. All the women went. Mm-hmm. I don't think Alamo had any problems. I don't think the Blossoms had any problems. I don't think Lone Stars had any problems. So, I don't know. Maybe it's a level of commitment. Because there is a little commitment,
That's an interesting point. You really haven't heard as much about kind of the forfeits and stuff like that in the women's game.
Oh, no. Listen, in the men, just us, Samba, 4 teams forfeited against us, not coming here to San Antonio. So, it's I think it's just a level of commitment. I know there's going to be maybe 3 or 4 teams for the men next year. For the women, like I said, we are trying to go to the WPSL. It's still a long process. And in my opinion, I don't think the UPSL, they're a men's league. In my opinion, the UPSL should focus on men. Mm-hmm. That, they have I don't know how many teams, right, Danielle? 200 and something teams.
300 plus teams right now.
I think the UPSL is what the WPSL is. Mm-hmm. One is men, one is women. Now, the WPSL has never tried to do anything else. The UPSL tried, they're doing youth academy now and they want to do the women. We have a saying in Spanish that says, zapatero tu zapatos. And what that means is that, subject matter expert, whatever you're an expert on, dedicate yourself to that. Don't try to do 2 or 3 or 4 things at the same time because sometimes it doesn't work. So going back to Danielle, I think the women, San Antonio can support 5, 6, maybe 7 teams. Mm-hmm. They're all different levels. Whatever league you want to play in is a different level because there's the UPSL and the WPSL and the United Women's Soccer League. They're all different levels.
I think the point that me and Scott have kind of hinted at is when you look at the Dash, or not the Dash, but the Houston Aces,
yes,
they have a very talented roster, and a lot of them, from my understanding, are Dash affiliated players along those lines here. Or the reason why we've asked that question is more if you had the best players from each of the teams and put them on, let's say, the Athenians or whichever team that would be on there, then you could have that team that I think could contend or compete with the best teams, not only here in San Antonio, but statewide and even nationally. I think that's more the question that me and Scott have kind of asked is, it's not that we can't support the teams, because obviously we can support the teams, but is the talent enough, depending on the different leagues and the different levels, to where we're maybe spreading the talent out, which is good, but it hurts us when it comes to season stats and going against, for instance, the Houston Aces as an example.
Well, let me tell you about the Houston Aces, because I know their story very good. So the Houston Aces were part of the WPSL, and then like in 2015 they separated and they went to the United Women's League, which was also a fallout of the Y League. You remember the Y League, Danielle? The Y League disappeared.
Yeah, there was like a couple. Yeah.
Yes. So it disappeared. Well, the Aces were one of the teams that went to that United Women's League, and they were playing on another division. There was no Texas division. And, they actually won the national championship of that league 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. But then they convinced them to come to the Texas division, where you had Austin Elite, which was a team from the WPSL. Mm-hmm. Then you had the Athenians came in there, and then you had a team from El Paso.
Yes, sir.
Well, if you look at their stats, the Aces, there's no competition for them. All the games were like 5 goals and above, 8-0, 9-0. I mean, 5-3, 5-2. But then let me tell you what happened. They got eliminated in the first round.
Mm-hmm. They went to LA.
I heard a rumor, and it's just a rumor. You know how rumors are, that I think the Aces are going back to the other conference, because the Aces have the privilege of having Dash players. I mean, how nice is that? If you have 5 or 6 players that are from the Dash, I mean, their level. I watched one of their games against Athenians.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, there's no comparison. I mean, if you looked at that game, it's like some of the Dash players were just running circles around the Athenians players. I mean, they play all year long. They train with the best coaches. They're in the Dash. So, yes, if we're going to have a team of that caliber here in San Antonio, then you have to start looking outside too. You need to bring players that are seasoned.
I'll also be honest with you. I know a lot of women in San Antonio who can play at that level, but I think women are also a little bit more discerning about who they play for. So
that's correct.
We have 2 teams who are affiliated with youth clubs, and so maybe they played for competing clubs growing up. So it's kind of, you still have that mentality of
Blossom, yes.
United. I'm not going to play for Elite, and they may not have tryouts. And then same with Alamo City.
Yes.
So you may not want to play for some of these clubs. But I also know some people who are picky about, hey, they played in college. They played D1, D2. They have high expectations about what training should be like, what coaches should be like, the expectations. And they also don't want to, I'm going to be honest, I've heard, they want to make sure, hey, is this team going to be around?
That's
they
true.
want to make sure that it's secure and stable, and they want to play, because there's some fantastic women's players who aren't playing.
A lot of them, yes.
And it also depends on styles. Sometimes too, I've seen people who've tried out and who were some of the better people at the tryout, but because stylistically they were a little different, didn't get selected. But I'm like, they're one of the best players out there. So you have such a deep talent pool in San Antonio that I think you also have the talent here. But again, you also don't have people on loan from the Dash, which is a completely different level. Like that's the way everyone in SAFC gives RGV a hard time about Dynamo players on loan.
Exactly.
It's not. It's apples and oranges.
At that point, you might as well be looking at an NWSL roster, at least half of one, right?
Well, now you mentioned NWSL. NWSL teams they pay the players.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a difference when you come back to San Antonio. Danielle mentioned it. Blossoms, Classics Elite. Alamo City. The club supported. So the girl doesn't have to pay a single cent. All she has to do is show up to practice and play. But there's teams like us that we don't have that support. And there's a lot of them. We're not the only one. You got to charge something because you got to pay the league. You got to pay the stadium where you play. You got to pay the practice field. So that, some, like Danielle said, some Division I players, they say, okay, well, what should I do? Should I play or should I go to Bahamas or should I go to, because it's the summer. Exactly. I mean, you got to remember, some of these girls that Michelle is talking about, I think the only way they would play is if they're going to get paid a little bit and they're going to play in a professional league.
Environment.
Exactly. Like she said, if I can get 7 players from the Dash, and I'm not one of them, but I'm going there, I know, oh my God, I'm going to play with, I don't know, just for sake. Here comes Tobin Heat to be a reinforcement. Ooh, I want to play with her.
And they use the same practice facilities too. So the Dash Dynamo practice facilities, the Aces play their games at that sports complex. Yes. It's the equivalent of our Star. So they have the professional facilities with a trainer and things like that, which make a difference. But I want to kind of segue. We've been talking about NWSL and bringing NWSL in and paying players and just some of the realistic expectations of what it would take. Because I looked into it and I know I've written about bringing NWSL to San Antonio, and I think the city would blow up. Toyota Field's a perfect place to have it. But in terms of what they pay players, the salary cap for an NWSL team is
45 million, right?
It's over 400,000. So you're talking $1 million just in salary per year.
Salary, yes. Yes, it is.
You have to pay your referees overnight. You have 12 away games, and that's if the conference stays the exact same. So you're talking minimally probably $1 to $2 million a year.
Yeah.
Look at all of the comments Amanda Duffy has made, who was the interim NWSL president, who's now the NWSL president. She's talking about slow growth. They already have their teams for 2020 selected, but I don't think they're quite talking about it, but they want to have a foundation. And they've kind of hinted at some people who've been talking to them for several years.
Okay.
But they want to make sure that they're not bringing another Boston Breakers or an FC.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. Exactly.
So they're looking at people who have longevity. They want people with a 10-year plan and investors deep enough that are going to invest, $5 million a year for the next 10 years. But not only that, is if you've also followed the NWSL, Sky Blue SC last year had a huge controversy over subpar standards in terms of the way they treated players. So even though they played at Rutgers, they didn't have a place to shower. They didn't have bathrooms. They had porta potties. They brought an RV.
Minimum standards. Yes.
But that's still going on this year a little. They've improved, but it's still going on a little bit this year.
They're still hitting we're doing it, but it's the minimum. And if you look at all the pictures from the players, it's very skeptical. So now if they're going to bring a team in, they're going to expect them to have true facilities. Like when they brought the Utah Royals in, the Royals have their own locker room separate from Real Salt Lake.
Yeah.
So, they have robes and slippers and at this point, it'd basically be the equivalent of bringing in a USL team. If you don't have the capital and the support to bring in a USL team, then don't even waste your time and your money. It'd be better to invest in the team that you have and develop them and develop the players and continue to make those connections. But it's an astronomical fee. And when you're competing with the likes of LAFC, FC Barcelona, yes, Messi's Barcelona has already talked to the NWSL and they want to bring in a team. If Sky Blue ever releases, they have a radius that includes New York City. So Sky Blue has blocked all teams from coming to New York City. And if they ever release that, I can guarantee an NYCFC with a Manchester City who has a strong women's program in the EPL will bring a women's team to New York City And that's an easy competition with Sky Blue and DC. So there's lots of good things going on, and they want to make sure that it stays good and that it's not just, a flash in the pan, here today, gone tomorrow. So they want the 10 years. They were even hesitant with Atlanta. Atlanta has been talking about having a women's team, and they're like, we're not making any decisions. We're not just yet. So if they're iffy on Atlanta United bringing a women's team, it kind of shows you the high criteria that they have. So, and you can find that on their website and Googling it.
But locally, I guess here's my question. With Austin FC coming in, I know Precourt has openly discussed bringing in a team. Could you, and obviously with the MLS connection, you would have to figure he's got the capital, and with the new stadium coming in, as much as we dislike Austin, I think it would be a successful team. Could you see them going Austin and San Antonio if let's say SSNE changed? Let's say, hey, we're not going to be able to do MLS for millions of reasons, to where they flipped it to where we got Toyota Stadium. It's a great stadium. I'm sure they'd probably have to do some upgrades with locker rooms and stuff like that. But could you see a situation where you have both Austin and San Antonio?
Well, I can tell you something. If somebody is going to bring women to San Antonio, it's going to be the Spurs.
Right.
Okay? I mean, I might be wrong, but they already have the infrastructure. The Spurs have everything. Toyota Field. I mean, let's be honest. If they're going to bring that league in coming here, where are they going to play? There's only very few avenues where they can play right now. Toyota being one of them, Alamo Stadium being the other. Alamo Stadium, not the Alamo Dome.
Right.
Alamo Stadium being another one. They're not going to accept, like Danielle just explained it very clear and to the point. They don't want another Boston Breakers. They don't want another Kansas City. They don't want those teams that come in 1-2 years and then they disappear. That's bad for the league. And that's the problem with WPSL, with United Women's League. There's teams that go in there, 2-3 years, boom, they're out. Mm-hmm. Well, there's teams that go in there 1 year and they're out. So, that league wants to mirror the MLS.
Do you think that Spurs Entertainment is willing to invest in this team? Because if you saw with the San Antonio Stars being shipped out to Las Vegas,
I said, in my opinion, they're the only one of the few that can do it. Because, like I said, they have the infrastructure already in place. And, I'm not saying other investors cannot come and say, okay, we're going to do it. They might build a stadium, or they might take over the Alamo Stadium. But, that's an ISD stadium, so I don't think that would happen.
So I think that they should. I think that the NWSL is ripe, and it's another one of those, if we don't get on board now, we're going to miss it. The other beautiful thing, Harry, is NWSL is not affiliated with MLS. And
no,
so Austin FC, I don't think they're going to want, after the brouhaha, I don't think it's going to be as easy to get in as Austin FC thinks. And I think, personally, I think it may have just been him saying it to get people on his side. I'm going to throw all of you a wrench, and because I'm going to throw something in that none of us have even thought of. There's another opportunity where an NWSL team could come in. Juventus. Has anyone considered? They just built a $3 million stadium?
They're building it. Yes, they are. Yeah, they are. Yeah.
It's a wonderful complex. They already have a youth system in place, and they already have a professional women's team in Italy going, so they know how to do it. And the Italian women's players, all of the players, we're not just the MLS. We're better than the MLS. Let's just face it. In terms of women's soccer, the NWSL is the La Liga, or even the EPL of international soccer. We're where everyone wants to come to play. So I could easily see Juventus bringing a women's team here and having success. You need to have a big team, big league names behind it. I absolutely think the Spurs could do it. The question is, do they want to? Obviously, they have the money and the capital if they were looking at going into MLS. And if you look around the league, the Sky Blue sold out 5,000-seat stadium. They're going into Red Bull Arena for their next match. So they're going to probably start to put minimum requirements of like 10,000-seat stadiums as part of it. This is the perfect time to get on board, build up the fan base. And I think it's easier too because you have nationally recognized names that people can get behind. They see it on the national team games where it's hard when you're coming as a fan to an SAFC match and you've got different players playing every game or every year. I mean, gosh, I miss Greg Cochran and Cyprian Hedrick, who we knew each other by face. Now it's, okay, now I've got to learn who the players are. And I'm going to be honest, I'm halfway through the season and I recognize a few of the players by like face and name. And so I think that's different with a national women's team. You have the consistency where people can buy the jerseys, plus the Canadian national team and the U.S. national team. And I believe there's one other national team where they pay the salary of their players. And I don't think it goes towards your salary cap, but you're getting national team players.
I have a question for Rafa, piggybacking that. Could you see, because you mentioned Liga, the female Liga in Mexico, could you see, let's say, Club America or one of the top clubs there coming up here? And because to me, it's putting your flag in San Antonio. Could you see that as a possibility as well?
I could see that because I was part of Club America's academy here for the boys, but there's such a big tap of resources of women talent here that they're willing to start a team over here and then sending some of those down there to Mexico.
Well, you would have to get federation approval for something like that,
yes,
right? To be able to come overseas.
But you got to remember, Scott. Remember, they had Chivas USA. Okay. You know, they could be Club America USA women's, you know, and have that affiliation, and then that could be their farm system for a lot of the Liga MX teams in Mexico, or send them out to Europe, which I know the French league is one of the biggest leagues for the women's, where a lot of the star players for the World Cup are playing at. So I can see that. But it's up to, I guess, see if the Spurs are willing to partner up, like I said, with Juventus or with Club America, Santos, or any of the women's professional teams. If they're willing to risk, you know, even offset the costs, I think that could happen. That, you know, it's literally, we can see a team here, but that's if they're willing to do that. And then also establish a women's academy, you know, start, you know, your grassroots, start them young, you know, build them up, all that. It's just going to put us on the map. You know, who's to say we end up having some players, women players on the World Cup, you know, whether it's USA, Mexico, you know, that's what the Spurs should kind of look into, and as far as the city, to put us on the map when it comes to women's soccer.
We already have two, Rafa. We already have two players on the youth one playing on the youth national team, one coming back from injury, who's looking at being in the one of the next youth World Cups. So we've got two women, and then we've got a ton of women in D1 and on the outskirts as well.
I think that's interesting about Weve. You know, I think people still, I guess just because it's so new, and I think it was like a $6 million facility that they have. Yeah.
I'm sorry. What's $3 million to?
Yeah. What's another $3 million?
You know, Scott, going back to youth soccer, right? Right now on the women's side, it's good for the high school girls to have all these teams where they can play. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said, I'm all for the Blossoms, the Alamo, Lone Stars. If you ask me, I think what is it? The Lone Stars now? San Antonio?
SA City.
SA City. I think they should have a WPSL team. Mm-hmm. I think who else is out there? The Lions should have. I mean, it's not this. The WPSL is not going to break you. In the contrary, all those girls that don't do anything during the summer, it's going to keep them fit, focused. And then it's going to attract, I'm telling you, Blossoms, like Danielle mentioned, they don't have to have tryouts. They got so many girls that are in their academy. Alamo did, as a matter of fact, Alamo had two teams. They had a WPSL and they had a UPSL. Now, yes, the level is different, but it doesn't matter. It's developing these girls. Mm-hmm. I'll bet you the girls that play UPSL next season, they're going to be better. Or as a matter of fact, going back to their clubs now, they're going to be much better. So in my opinion, all these, Albion did it. If you go to Houston, Albion has a WPSL team now.
Well, you coach in high school, you know who the elite teams are as far as the women's soccer,
Yes.
like the Wiggins and so forth.
Oh, yes.
You think this will benefit maybe developing players like from the girls side, from the south side, like teams like from Harlandale side? I think that would give them an opportunity because there is a big gap as far as talent-wise and technique-wise, especially when you see games in the playoffs, there are sort of some lopsided games. But I think they would give a lot of, especially that area, an opportunity to get that development and then also, to compete to play in college.
Yes, and let me tell you, for example, I got approached by a guy that has like a women's team on the league, and he told me, hey, how difficult is it to get? I want to put in a team for next year. I got all these girls from the south side. And I said, well, you just got to call. I gave him the number, and I says, call. And, call the WPSL. It's a little bit more money, but it's not that. I mean, like I said, if you get your ducks in order, and then, like you said, it will develop the girls in high school. We had a couple of girls in my team playing. They were high school girls.
Mm-hmm.
I had a freshman and I had 2 sophomores. And I'll bet you now that when they go back to their high school, they're going to go, whoa. I mean, it did help me to play against other girls that were Division I, Division II, Division III, girls. So, Sporty had a lot of high school girls too.
I think a great example is the Blossoms. I know Scott, me, you, Harry, were all out at their games last season. I don't know if any of you guys went this season, but it was still a lot of the same players. But you look at it and you're like, this is a completely different team.
Yes,
it was a very different team. And because they got that experience, they knew what to expect and how difficult the league was, the physicality. A lot of them went then back to their college, ready to play, stepped it up, and then came back with that high expectation. And just a little tidbit, I don't know if this is like for personal news, but I heard Naomi Powell went over to England and had a tryout overseas. And they're like, yes, whenever you're ready. Nottingham Forest.
Awesome.
One of those. So they're doing different things. And then if we look at Marlena Kampa, who went professional in
She's
Iceland.
in Iceland. Yeah.
So it's giving them that path, that development, and that continued development, continuing to see what the level is. So they're coming back to their youth teams, their high school teams, or going back to college and able to bring it to the next level. So absolutely, it's great for development of the women's game and a women's player. And just to be coached by we have so many talented coaches as well in the women's, all the women's teams.
I know when I spoke with Alamo City, and because they had a great setup because they had the WPSL team and then they had the UPSL team, and where they saw the benefits of, and I spoke with a parents of a 13-year-old that was on there, and I was like, well, hey, any chance she gets promoted up? And they're like, no, but the difference between the high school and the UPSL team was a big difference to where she could get used to the different speed, get used to the physicality, to where when she goes back to high school, it's not, she's going to even be on a different tier comparatively. But I liked it to where you still got, you have your top girls that you have here, but the girls that are, let's say on the second 11 or below that, they're still getting that time in, that physicality, that tactical portion, and you're building that system. And that's why I know we mentioned, hey, maybe UPSL should stick to the men, and I know they got a lot of work and that they need to do, but I actually enjoyed the women's side because I think it gave the high schoolers the opportunity where maybe in WPSL you may not get that, because that's a little bit higher level with a little bit more physicality that maybe some of the fringe high schoolers may not be able to get that opportunity.
Go ahead, Diane.
I was going to say it's also great because we don't expect everyone to go to the national team, but for some of these players, especially as we're talking about maybe some fringe players, or as we're talking about Southside, maybe it's their opportunity to get a scholarship for a D2 school, or to play somewhere. So maybe it just gives them that little bit of an advantage of maybe they're not going to play for the national team, but now they can maybe have the opportunity to maybe play international in Iceland or other countries and make some money, or get a scholarship or even a partial scholarship to help fund them to go to school and better career opportunities.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but some of these girls just want a place to play competitive soccer on Sundays. It's not a co-ed league or something like that, you know, with guys like me that are 33 and don't belong out there. So, I mean, it provides all those different levels, you know, for these girls. And I think that's a great point, Danielle, that you bring up is, you know, for each of them, it's dependent upon what it is that the girl's trying to achieve with what she's wanting to do as far as still playing. But I know we wanted to get into a little bit of San Antonio FC talk too, so I'm going to have to be the bearer of bad news here.
Can I just say something real quick to
Absolutely,
finish?
Coach Auggie. I was going to give you a second
I'm
here.
piggybacking on Rafa. He was talking about the South Side, right? About the players that, you know. Let me tell you something. The 10 years that I've been here, there is a place for every girl that wants to play college. Do not listen to all these coaches that say, oh, if you don't play for a high-level team or if you don't play for a high school that goes to the playoffs, you're never going to make it to college. Let me tell you this. That is wrong. I can say it with certainty. In my team that I had with Samba, 13 players I coached when they were 10 years old. They did not all go to Division I schools. Listen, there's a place in Division 1, 2, 3, NIA, even Cisco. The girl that scored all my goals, AJ, she played for a community college. So, you know what's more important than trying to get a scholarship, an athletic scholarship? Get good grades. Mm-hmm. Okay? My son went to St. Mary's with everything paid because he had a 4.0 GPA, and he got scholarships, academic scholarships. He did not get a single cent of athletic. And so get good grades, work hard in school. And then another thing, if you're playing on any high school team, try to be the best player. When coaches go look for players, they don't go to the best teams. They go to watch games, to watch you play. They're not going to ask you, do you play for a premier team? Do you play for an ECNL team? No. They're going to go watch a game, and they don't care who they're watching. You know what? I like that girl. She's aggressive. She's technical. I want her. That's it. So that's my advice to all the girls is get good grades. And that to boys is the same thing. So,
Coach, you know, Danielle was talking about our great female coaches that we have here in San Antonio. Obviously, it was great having one of them on here with us tonight for the show. So we're going to be right back to kind of break down some San Antonio FC stuff. We're going to let Coach Auggie say goodnight. Again, Coach Auggie, thank you for joining us so much. Good luck in the upcoming season.
No, thank you very much for everybody, and I hope you can follow Samba FC. You know, have a boys team. Thank you. Thanks, Danielle. Thank you, Rafa, Harry,
Good talking
Scott.
with you.
We'll be following.
Yeah, we'll see you in the field. We'll see you reffing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Nah, that's cool. I got plenty of time.
All right.
The
Well,
Reds didn't live up to their money's worth.
I will say this. I was sitting next to the Central Texas the Lobos owner. I thought he was the coach, but he was actually the owner, David. He was like, yeah, San Antonio is not getting any goals. It's good. So,
If he's watching, thank you for the scarves. I'm going to tell him
yes, we'll definitely touch base on that.
Well, we are live and we are back. So as you heard, some inside info there with the game for San Antonio FC that we wanted to get into tonight. Again, Coach Auggie, thank you for coming on and talking women's soccer with us. But yeah, unfortunately, we were unable to continue the win streak there at home versus a very, very, I don't know. I didn't think that they were that strong. Rafa, what did you think of the match? I'll start with you, man, since you've kind of been our quiet one tonight for San Antonio FC.
Well, Well, I can say the Sacramento Republic is a very dirty team as far as physical. And I think the whole game changed when Frank got elbowed in the box, which should have been a PK and a straight red. And the ref, thought he was playing around, thinking he was just rolling around. I think that got her focus off the game, and everything just went downhill after that. We defensive falling asleep, letting some goals in, that first goal in. I thought the second goal should not have counted because I saw the replay, and Cardone there was a Sacramento player right in front of him. That should have been an offsides. But you got to give it to the guys. They didn't quit. They kept on fighting. They almost pulled off a comeback. Maybe we should have made some changes a lot sooner than maybe waiting till like maybe 20 or 10 minutes left. And I think we could have, probably ended up with a tie, at least come out with a point. So, maybe hopefully the guys will learn from this. Going into the next game. I know we're not the favorites for the next game, but if we can pull out a miracle and get the 3 points against Reno, it'll get us back on track, for the playoff chase.
Yeah, and you talk about the subs and everything, and the elbow, and we're not going to give you too hard of a time here, Danielle. We already agreed upon that before we came back from our break. But obviously, the elbow was kind of just one of those moments during play, that kind of changes the course of the game a little bit. But kind of getting back to that marking, we talked about if that might be a problem inside the box for San Antonio FC. And I feel like they kind of picked us apart when it came to, our marking there within our own defensive end. And I just don't know, how we're going to correct that or get better at that. My big thing that I saw kind of early on is Billy. And I know we've talked about this season, him kind of being hot or cold. And I guess it kind of, for me, goes back to Coach Paligan with some of the frustrations. Do you feel like he should have been subbed maybe a little bit earlier? Do you feel like early on you could tell that maybe it wasn't going to be a good night there for Billy Forbes? I'll start with you, Harry.
Billy is interesting. Because I guess the question is you put in Restrepo, you bring him in, 10 minutes earlier, let's say instead of the 82nd minute, the 72nd minute. I guess my question is where's Jamison? Would the team be better off with Jamison, Lopez, and Gomez up there? Because I think Jamison's, I don't know if he's as fast, but I think he's got that. He's MLS quality, obviously, coming from there. I just don't know if you start Billy, he's been such an iron horse that, typically you ride him through, but there's been times where we've seen him that he's just, he just looks worn out on the pitch, but he doesn't get subbed off and this time he did. And, I guess to me, the question kind of comes into at this point, is the team better off with Jamison over Forbes? Cause I don't think, Restrepo is a starter, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's better off from the bench.
No, and I agree with you. I think what Jameson has maybe, and you kind of touched on it, it's not necessarily maybe speed, but he's got that through ball where it just seems like his timing on that through ball, that he's got that down pretty good, whether it's Lopez running onto that thing or, whoever, whether it's Billy that he's feeding or whatever. But I do agree. I think Jamison kind of gives you that attacking, that through ball. And I felt like most of the attack was really going through Pirano and Lopez, and the opposite side of the field kind of from Billy was really where we were getting the majority of our successful chances. Danielle, what have you kind of thought just overall with Billy's play this season a little bit?
So I'm going to be honest with you, and you're probably going to get tons of hate mail, and I'm going to get hate mail. I'm honestly just not a Billy fan. Number one, especially the last 20 minutes where we see the difference in play, he walks back, and half the time he doesn't get caught. He doesn't catch up to onsides. So then when we do have a breakaway, he's standing in an offsides position, then spends a couple minutes complaining to the ref about a very legitimate call that he was offsides. I mean, in the Austin Bold game, I'm watching and I'm like, nope, ref's got spot on call every time. And how many times was he offsides? So he's costing us those opportunities. But then on the flip side, I'm just going to be honest, Billy walks back to defense. Mm-hmm. So especially if it's a tight game and we could have had, if it was like a 2-2 game, he doesn't get back on defense for the last 20 minutes. He walks around on the side. And then you can tell he's tired because he gets the ball stripped from him. So my personal opinion, but he has those moments and he has those sparks, and he was doing some great stuff with Frank when they first made that pairing. Mm-hmm. But I agree with Harry. I think he should be subbed off earlier because he's really a detriment in the last 20 minutes. He looks tired. He's walking back on defense. He's not coming back to defend. So then everyone else has to adjust. And then he's getting caught off sides all the time. So to me, it's either a laziness and a mentality issue or a lack of training. So, because there's no excuse. You learn that in what, U12, how to not be offsides.
Or how to get back and hustle. And you saw in Lopez, I think, early on, actually, against Sacramento, where he tracked back like all the way to our own 18 to win a ball. And that's what you like to see, you know, as a fan.
Gomez, too.
And that's why, to me, I wonder if you need a goal late, bringing Forbes on with his speed and something, I think would be, where you're trying to push forward. I think that's where he would excel at, because then he's fresh, he's hungry, and if you give up a second goal, you're already behind, or along those lines there. But to me, I would almost like to see Jamison start, and then if you need to bring Forbes on, bring him in. The 7, give him 20 minutes or so. Whereas his speed is an asset, and he does have the creativity, to be able to, do a little one-on-one with Pirano, but it's just one of those things where if he's on, he can be one of the best players, but the problem is when he's off, he doesn't give a lot to the team when he's not on, and that's the issue.
And I feel like that's where, in this match, I know he kind of has his usual 70th minute where he kind of stops getting back altogether. But even like as early as the first half, you could tell. And he did kind of take a tough tackle a little bit early on, that he was a little slow to get up. Now it's Billy. So you never know if it was just one of his moments, as you alluded to earlier there, Danielle, or if, maybe something got tweaked a little bit there. But if that is the case, I feel like maybe Powell should have stepped in and said something, or noticed he was off a little bit and kind of made that substitution. I mean, even as early as halftime, and you saw that kind of coming out of the locker room after the first half. There weren't any adjustments really made coming out there to start the second half. Rafa, were you surprised at all? I know you kind of came and sat over there with me to start off.
Yeah, I was surprised about that. And like what Danielle kind of touched on, him like kind of walking back. You're playing a 3-man defense, your wings have to come back and get that space. And he, since the first half, he's kind of been leaving our outside defender kind of high and dry, which I'm surprised we haven't been scored on a lot more because of that. And I think Powell needs to kind of realize this, what? I'm not going to sacrifice, goals because of someone's laziness. And that's something that I think we had talked about formations. Something I would like to see, if he's going to play a 3-man defense, maybe playing a 3-5-2, bring in Jamison as the attacking mid, have Ever and Lopez up front. And then have
Lopez plays, because one thing that we did see, Lopez came out with the 53rd. Yeah. He came out due to injury, not performance. So hopefully it's nothing serious, and it was more, hey, he tweaked something. Let's take him out as precaution.
Yeah, then we can have Gomez as one outside on the wing, because he does hustle back. We can have Barbie on the outside back, and then also Pirano with Jamison, in those attacking mids, and then have Pekka as the holding mid. I think a 3-5-2 with that puts your best players out there and changes it up a bit. Plus, when you do attack on a 3-5-2, you're actually a 3-4-3. And then when you defend, like I said, you're still be able to defend all the areas you need. So I think that's what Powell maybe needs to look into the next game. If Franks is available, maybe this will open Billy's eyes and realize, I need to step it up or not. I want to be stuck here on the bench.
Because that's where he's kind of been. I mean, there's been some spurts there where he hasn't been getting very minutes, and you could tell he was kind of frustrated. And then we saw, last month or whatever, where he seemed to be getting some more playing time and seemed to have kind of turned something around a little bit. But obviously, this past weekend's performance, not very indicative of that.
Well, we know last year, towards the end of the season, he was mostly on the bench with Phoenix. And I know Phoenix has a little bit more firepower. But that was kind of the surprise where, I've spoke with quite a few Phoenix fans, and the performance that he's putting in now was semi what he was doing out there. And their coach at that time, basically, Rick Shantz is like, hey, if you're going to be on the field, you need to do it on both sides. And that's what we thought with Coach Powell, is that you got to be able to do it on both sides. And to me, you've got to have that, and especially where points are pivotal now, you can't have a guy that's just one way, at this point here, and especially where he's, hot and cold on his side here, and like I said here, taking away the fan favorite in the history, if fans look at it objectively, you probably wouldn't have him in your starting 11.
I think
Didn't
the type of
he not start at the end of the season for SAFC before he went to Phoenix? I thought he was riding the bench for us too, and it was kind of like, okay, didn't he? I could be completely wrong, but I thought he was starting to.
He had a spell on the bench,
yeah, kind of fizzled out.
Surprised we even brought him back, because I was like, he sat on the bench, and so why did we bring him back?
Well, I don't think they had intentions on bringing him back, because that's why you signed Lance Lang. We talked about this earlier in the year.
Oh, really?
Signing Lance Lang, why are you bringing back Billy Forbes? And I think he didn't have I think Phoenix cut him, and he didn't have a place to go. And San Antonio is home for him, so it is. And unfortunately, Lang didn't have the good start like he had last year, and who knows where he's at now, because he hasn't been even on the 18 in months.
He was on the injury report for the match, I believe, this past weekend. So I don't know.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was on that. I noticed that because you didn't have him as a sub. And that was kind of the other thing, though. I know, Rafa, you mentioned Barmby there in your starting 11, and that was kind of the other head scratcher I felt like at the match versus Sacramento. Was when they subbed Barmby for Jose Gallegos. I felt that was kind of uneven swap. You really just swapped your kick taker for your kick taker a little bit, there in that situation. And you could tell Barmby
also
was a little
just the size too, because remember they were killing us.
They're big
on free kicks and corner kicks. Gallegos is a good change of pace. I rather had seen Gallegos going for Billy,
right?
Put him on the wing. But he actually will come back and defend. He's just a stop and go player. I think that would have been a better choice as far as the substitution than taking out Barmby, because I don't think Barmby was tired. He was helping a lot out in defending some of their top players. But this, like I said, Powell needs just better focus on the games and see, better matchups, because like I said, we do need to get rid of our weak link, and I think for the next game, I think Billy needs to be on the bench. It kind of maybe have him think things over. Say, hey, I need to step it up. I do need to play both ways a lot better, because if not, this could be my last year here and somewhere else.
Well, they got a tough matchup against Reno coming up here, Harry. I know you're hitting the road tomorrow morning for your drive up there to St. Louis. Let's put a pretty bow on this show and wrap it up with just kind of some final thoughts for this upcoming match versus Reno or women's soccer, or just whatever's on your mind. We'll start with you again, Danielle. Why don't you just go ahead and wrap it up with your final thoughts?
So my final thought is going to be a completely different thought, is Copa Tejas. SAFC has one more match. If we win, we go in the lead, but a bunch of other teams have 3 more matches to play. So this is critical. Even if we don't win the entire season, let's win a local trophy. And I also heard SAFC is going to be doing a TIFO party, which should be fun, kind of like the Paint the Wall party. So lots of good things for the last Copa match, which is August 17th here versus RGV. So welcome to the Slaughterhouse.
Amen. That's a big
one. The sandbox. It's the sandbox.
It's not looking like much of a – we'll see. But no, that's awesome. It wasn't looking like we were going to have much of a chance at that Copa Tejas Cup early on, and then kind of lucky to get some points in that here. So one more win would definitely help. But how about for you, Rafa? Any final thoughts for today's show?
Well, as far as for Saturday's game, I'm hoping that I think I see maybe a 1-1 tie. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for the 3 points, but I hopefully we can get the 1-1 tie and get ready for the next, the Copa Tega showdown with RGV. So that's one game I'm looking forward. And like I said, just final thoughts. So hopefully we can get, like I said, better support for women's soccer here in San Antonio. I think we can have a women's professional team. We just need sports entertainment just to kind of step it up, partner up with somebody who's done it before, whether it's Juventus, Club America, or even New York City FC, because we had a little partnership with them for a while. I think it'll be a good benefit for our city, showcase the talent we have as far as the women's soccer we have in San Antonio.
Absolutely. And last but not least, our expert here, Harry.
Yeah, not much of an expert, but I'm going to kind of go off topic on this one here. Me and Rafa, 2 weeks ago was over in El Paso. We all know, unfortunately, what happened this weekend here. I know Danielle kind of hinted at a TIFO party here. I know I've asked the Crocketeers, the Stampede, because I know there's about 15 of them coming up. And I know Thomas has reached out to Mission City as well here. I think I'm thinking with the Copa Tejas, they're going to be doing a TIFO to support El Paso, is my understanding for that here. But there's also, if you follow, on August 5th, Soccer Barista at Soccer Barista Dan Bond over in El Paso. He wrote a hell of an article on Protagonist Soccer. He's actually a manager or barista for Starbucks that is in that same area, and was very lucky not to be in the Walmart at that time. So it's something that I would really recommend reading. Make sure you got some tissue, because it's a hell of a first count feeling of what it is. And I know we're all a soccer soccer show, and I know during 90 minutes, RGV, Austin, El Paso, San Antonio, we all go at each other. But obviously, with last weekend, we all want to support each other, and whether it's giving blood, donations. I know there was a girls soccer team that their coaches unfortunately were shot. So if you can do anything to help out, like I said here, my suggestion, like I said here, if you just read the story from at Soccer Barista, and like I said here, if you can help out with the TIFO, from my understanding, it may have some correlation with the El Paso Strong for that here. And like I said here, I know I've reached out to the Stampede, and I think everybody, if it does come to truth that that's what SAFC will sign off on, I think all the supporter groups will be standing together for that, if possible.
So that'll be something definitely to keep an eye on for the next couple weeks. And again, this has been another episode of the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable. We out.